the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania is, well, a railroad museum in Pennsylvania. Man, that was really hard to figure out, I know. It's located in Strasburg, not to be confused with Strasburg Railroad, which is actually immediately across the street. Now, seriously, it's literally right there. They are smack dab next to each other. It's actually kind of perfect that way, because you can go to the Strasburg Heritage Railroad and ride a train pulled by a heritage steam locomotive, and then walk across the street and enjoy the Railroad Museum. And overall, it's a very nice place. The history of the museum dates all the way back to 1939, specifically the 1939 to 1940 New York World's Fair. See, it was at that fair that the Pennsylvania Railroad displayed a whole bunch of equipment they had, as railroads often did at the World's Fair. But after the fair had ended, the Pennsylvania Railroad decided that that particular list of equipment, everything that had been at the fair, was going to be earmarked for preservation, kept in storage until it could be put in something like a museum sometime in the future. Their exact plans to do this never really panned out, but they did hold on to that equipment, which is good, because Frenzy wasn't really great at preservation. I mean, some things from them got preserved, but compared to some others, they were kind of in the weak department, though not as bad as New York Central, as doubtless you are aware. Either way, though, all the stuff was moved to a roundhouse in Northumberland, Pennsylvania, and looked after by the employees of the railroad. And it all stayed there for decades, all the way until Penn Central came into existence. And by that point, they were looking to get rid of that stuff because, frankly, they didn't have any money, and they couldn't afford to maintain the property or have this stuff just kicking around or look after it at all. But the Pennsy brass on the board didn't want to scrap it because, again, it had been earmarked to be preserved. That was a promise that had been made, and they intended to keep it. Conveniently, it was about that time that the Pennsylvania government was actually looking to create a railroad museum. This lined up very conveniently with Penn Central's wish to get rid of this stuff, and the government decided to construct the museum across the street from Strasburg because by that point the railroad was doing very well, and yeah, it was a perfect spot. The engines were moved to the Strasburg Railroad and were stored there while the museum was being constructed, and much of the rolling stock was actually coupled together into one big train and taken that way. The museum was officially opened to the public on April 1st, 1975, and it was fortunately not an April Fool's Day joke. It showed off all of the Pennsylvania Railroad's historic collection, and over time they started getting a hold of some new stuff. So much that they needed more space, frankly. In 1995, the rolling stock hall was expanded by 55,000 square feet. And as of the making of this video, the museum covers 18 acres of land. 100,000 square feet of that is indoors. They have an outdoor section as well, but the indoor section is already pretty impressive, showing off a lot of Pennsylvania Railroad rolling stock.
Oh, look at the little baby. And now look at the big baby. Wow.
Such as GG1 number 4935, or 5741, a G5, and many more. I could go over the whole list of stuff there, but that would kind of spoil it, wouldn't it? And also you could look up a list on their website, you know. But it is a very enjoyable experience, with plenty of interesting exhibits. They offer small things like cab tours, and there's plenty of cab views as well, where you can see how this stuff really worked. Also, by the way, this is a really great alternative to trespassing on, like, actual railroad property. Don't do that. Go to the museum. It's a much better and very legal experience, in fact. But just don't go climbing on stuff you're not supposed to. And don't touch the exhibits. Never do that.
Alright, listen. I'm just going to show you real quick what happens if you try to touch one of these locomotives, okay? Here we go.
Now, you could spend a whole afternoon walking around the inside, but I mentioned there was an outside, right? Oh yeah, there's plenty of engines stored outside. And this is a very upbeat video that I'm having a lot of fun with, so naturally I wouldn't do anything to disturb that, like having a particularly sad montage of the current state of the equipment that's stored outdoors. That would be a really, really silly thing for me to do. I would never dare. Yeah, the stuff that's stored outside is not looking good, guys. And it's unfortunate. And I don't want to come down too hard on the museum, because I don't think it's their fault directly. But it is a pretty depressing sight. Though I think it is important that you guys see what happens when people don't care about this kind of thing. Some have pointed out that I tend to be a bit too overzealous when it comes to preservation, and perhaps that's true, but I'm a realist and I understand not everything can be saved. But the statement, "you can't save everything," kind of frustrates me, because that's the same exact thing that was probably said back when all the steam engines were being scrapped. Oh well, you can't save everything. Oh well, you can't save everything. And you say that, repeatedly, over and over and over again, until eventually you start saying, wait, why didn't they save at least one? You see what happens here? When people don't care, things tend to disappear. So I always try to push to preserve as much as possible when it comes to these historical artifacts, because if you have a lax attitude about everything, because, oh, there's still plenty more, don't worry about it. No, that's dangerous, because you're going to keep saying that until eventually they're just all gone. But more to the point, these are already in preservation, but they're stored outside in the weather and have been for a long time. A few of these I've mentioned in other videos, and are actually very important because they're one of a kind. 6755, for example, is the only M1 class to survive, and she's looking pretty rough. Other, less rare locomotives are out here too, like 3750, who's one of only 2 surviving K4s, arguably the most famous Pennsylvania Railroad steam engine ever. Also, by the way, Pennsylvania Railroad built over 400 K4s and they only saved 2 of them, and I think that's a little embarrassing. Now, granted, one of them is being restored to operation, which is great, but 3750's in a museum, and yet she looks like this, and that's not good. And there's the GG1, number 4800. And I know what you're gonna say, but 4935 is inside and looks great. What's the big deal if one has to sit outside? Well, okay, I get you there, but 4800 is the GG1, the original GG1, the prototype of the entire class. That's pretty distinctive, and she's also outside. Now, again, I am not coming down on the museum because, first of all, I think it is a really good experience either way, and you should definitely go. But it is very frustrating to see the current state of some of the outdoor rolling stock. It's obvious that they haven't had the funding to really take care of them the way they want to. 7688 over here, who also isn't one of a kind, I know, seemingly has received one of the most basic paint jobs I've ever seen in my life. They literally just sprayed her black. But, that's better than nothing. They're trying. And they do appear to be working on some kind of at least temporary shelter in the back, near their restoration shed, which is off limits. You are not allowed back here. It is forbidden! The reason I bring all this up is, A, I think more people should care about this kind of stuff. These historical artifacts deserve to be preserved. They are in a museum. They should be taken care of properly. But in order to do that, the museum needs support. In order to get support, they need people to show up or donate. I'll leave a link to their website in the description, or you can plan a visit. But the bigger issue going on here is, I think, nothing to do with the museum, but to do with the government, because the museum is state-owned and under the control of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, as well as active support from the Friends of the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. As such, they receive some state funding, and that's great. First of all, it's obviously not enough. And I drove here, okay? There were plenty of potholes, guys. Where's my taxes going? Because if we're gonna have potholes, you could at least build a wooden shack over some of these engines, okay? It's one or the other. Fill in the holes or build the shack. Pick one! But the other issue is that there have been long-standing plans to correct this exact problem I'm showing you. As you can see, there's a turntable outside, which dates back to 1928, and the plan is to build a relatively small, by roundhouse standards, roundhouse around said turntable and store a lot of the outdoor displays in the roundhouse, where they won't rust into oblivion. Great, awesome, but this plan dates all the way back to at least 2013. It is now 2024, what's going on? Well, as of 2019, they announced that they had reached their funding goal for said roundhouse, and they still haven't broken ground on it, nor have made any announcements that I can find regarding actually following through on those plans. And this raises all sorts of questions in my mind because, alright, I understand these things take time and money, but you've had time and you raised the money. Where's the roundhouse? I have some questions. And none of them are gonna be easy for you to answer, because I'm sure that the COVID thing probably threw a monkey wrench into the plans. I understand that, I do, but I think everyone who donated deserves at least some kind of announcement regarding this. What's going on with the roundhouse? Why haven't you said anything about it? At least tell people, oh hey, here's what's going on, here's where the money is, here's what we're gonna do. We're still working on it, plans are coming together, but the silence is rather alarming. If you don't tell us, it leads us to imagine. And when money is not accounted for, donated money, mind you, people's imaginations tend to run wild. And I don't want to accuse the museum of anything, because they have plenty of staff that actually care. They were very helpful and friendly, and I think it is a wonderful, nice place to go, especially if you're a fan of railroad history. Also, they have a bunch of locomotives, some of which are very historically relevant because there's only one in existence, sitting outside in the elements, and they don't have the funds to keep up with Mother Nature. But apparently, they had the funds to build a shelter for them, so they wouldn't have to do that anymore. What's going on? Is it the state? Maybe. It's hard to say. Politicians and all that. I just have a lot of questions. But I do still think you should definitely go and enjoy the museum, as it is an awesome experience, regardless. They should probably build that frickin' roundhouse, though. Now seriously, just make a statement about it, guys. Just let us know. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. Where'd the money go? Is the roundhouse still being built? And if it isn't, maybe consider some kind of alternative. That small shelter behind seems to suggest that they can't build the roundhouse right now, and they're working on a more temporary solution to at least give some cover to the rolling stock in most desperate need, but, you know, you could, like, say that and tell us. I'm just saying. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders. Some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Lord Off 444, Isaac Fur 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Josh Johnson, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Delinsky, Jared Brussel, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terrevel, Hayden DeGrow, No, Kurt Forcum, Ohio Trucker 1, Mr. Sleepy, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Liam Wright, Morris Hillman Productions, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Western Colorado History, Ryan Weofer, DeRoushi, Your Mom Liked It, Windy City Rails, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Murder Drone Stall, Eric Hutton, AET Museum, NJ 1969, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.